We're back here on Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. It's another week, and it is Monday, October the 6th, 2025. Welcome in, Burnt Orange Faithful. I hope you guys are doing as well as you can, possibly, after this weekend, and I hope that you are alive, especially if you're coming back from the swamp. Emmy Nixon is here, my fantastic co-host. And Emmy, before I continue my intro dialogue, I have to ask you one simple yes or no question.
Okay.
But I'll allow you 2 to 3 sentences leeway of explanation or detail if you would like after you hear the question, okay?
Okay. Yeah.
Here's the question, and it's got nothing to do with football. Have you ever in your life, to your knowledge or to your memory, actively been either in the path or in an active natural disaster, whether it's a hurricane, a tornado, an earthquake, whatever it might be? Have you ever been in one of those before?
Harvey, but I don't count it because I was in Austin. It was like the Harvey was just kind of sitting over Houston. We were getting the edge of it over in Austin, but it was still coming down hard though. That's about it though. There was a couple tornado stuff. There was a couple tornado things in Dallas when I lived there, but that's about it.
Okay. Well, in my 2 years in Houston, I experienced a couple bad storms, tropical storms, if you will, not quite hurricanes. But I've never really been in like a tornado or like a bad hurricane or anything like that. But I do know for a fact that the people down in Gainesville, some of which may or may not watch our podcast by chance this week, since we're recapping that game, have at some point. Like if you live in the state of Florida, in any part of Florida, you've probably been in a natural disaster before.
Yeah, you've been through some shit.
Likely a hurricane, most likely. Now, luckily for our friends down in Gainesville and our friends in the swamp on Saturday, the natural disaster that occurred in the swamp on Saturday didn't victimize those people. Unfortunately for us, though, it victimized everybody wearing those icy white uniforms in the burnt orange, whether you're a player, coach, or fan. So today, on today's show, we are here to pick up the pieces, the debris from that natural disaster of a football game for the Texas Longhorns on Saturday in the swamp, which drops Texas to 3-2 on the season. So now they're really playing with their backs against the wall with respects to the college football playoff, and drops them all the way out of the AP poll. Preseason number 1 to unranked in the span of 5 weeks. We're going to attempt to pick up the pieces, dissect what's going on here to the best of our ability, and see if anything at all can be done to save this season. And then on the back half, if you are the faint of heart or you don't enjoy this conversation, you can, fast forward to the 35-minute mark where we will be discussing college basketball. We're 4 weeks away, ladies and gentlemen. I'm excited. I know Emmy in probably some ways is kind of excited as basketball season is almost here, both in the professional ranks and at the college ranks. And we're going to be talking about the SEC. I don't know how much we're going to get into tonight, but over the next couple of weeks, we'll be talking some college basketball leading up to the season.
Yep.
But before we do that, I have 2 simple demands for everyone. And I apologize for the longer intro tonight. Number 1 is, please do what it says right there on your screen. Like and subscribe. It doesn't take you but 2 seconds, 2 milliseconds. It doesn't sign you up for anything. You'll likely forget you even did it. 3 minutes after you do it, and it just helps us. The least you can make fun of us, you can make fun of Texas, you can take all the shots that you want at the Longhorns.
But
But
subscribe first, though.
the least you can do for us is just hit the subscribe button. Because over like 85% of you, or some crazy number like that view our content are unsubscribed. So please just click that button. And then secondly, I have to ask you guys before we get into the conversation. Does your head ever hurt, or has it hurt watching this Texas football team?
Yes.
Well, I don't blame you, and I experienced the same thing. But I know where you can find help. Introducing Bevo Bliss, the only over-the-counter pain relief medicine specifically formulated for Longhorn fans. Whether it's red zone collapses, arch interceptions, or watching Sark call run plays into a brick wall of Gators on 2nd and 15 after Brandon Baker gets his third false start of the game, Bevo Bliss can help you. Bevo Bliss, because breaking your TV isn't FDA approved. Okay, they just give me the ad reads. I have nothing to do with them. That's that. Emmy, if you can sum up Saturday's performance with 3 adjectives,
God,
how would you do it?
fuck, shit, bitch. Oh no, never mind. Yeah. So I 3 adjectives, huh? I mean, disaster. That's probably a theme of the show. I think I guess frustrating is another, and just we're garbage time warriors, man. We love being garbage time warriors. That's a theme this season, and also I like that kind of leads into a point I want to make to start out is like
Okay.
the struggles with Arch are all mental. They're all mental. Like nothing, none of it is physical. Well, I mean, the mechanics part of it, that's physical, but that's because he's not comfortable mentally. Um, and it's proven by the fact that some of his best play this season has been when the pressure has been off and the game wasn't in the balance. Like even in the Sam Houston game, he started off kind of poorly. He had some, receivers, make some tough catches on inaccurate balls, and then the game got out of reach and he settled in. He started dropping dimes. And even then, I mean, that Sam Houston win isn't really going to age that great either, just because I think they got absolutely smacked by whoever they played this week. But that's beside the point. Him playing like decently okay in that last part of the game just proves it, man. Like he's just, I'm fully on the we might have to bench him train now. Like I'm fully there. I'm fully on that train. I've gotten aboard the train and I'm riding on it now. Like I'm there. Like I'm already there. I don't think him playing through it I don't think there's a path where he's just gonna find it. I don't think that's an avenue at this point. I think he has to like sit, watch the film, continue to learn, continue to develop. But I don't think he should be doing that in a playing capacity right now because he's only hurting his confidence.
So, before I get into my notes, are you of the opinion that this is mostly on him, or are there other parties involved? How would you, I guess, like, what percentage of the blame goes on Arch? What percentage of the blame goes on Sark? What percentage of the blame goes on whatever else there is, in your opinion, that has caused this mess? How would you dissect that?
I think from an offensive standpoint, a good amount of this goes on one, the O line, and probably I would put Arch and Sark as kind of tied for second, I guess. But it's the thing is, even with the O line play that we got, that game was still somewhat within reach, which is kind of crazy to think about. Um, like if we got just a little bit better play out of Arch, like I think that game was 100% within reach. If you think about the throws that he missed on just wide open players around the field, like yeah, like definitely there was just so much meat left on the bone that you can't deny how much of this has to go on Arch. And I also think um, the other part of it is receivers aren't getting open. Like he's not seeing a clear picture because there isn't a clear picture when defenses go man coverage against these Longhorn wide receivers and they have the corners to kind of press them up and play physical. It hasn't been pretty. Like we saw UTEP kind of get physical with our receivers as well, and it kind of just like mudded up the picture for Arch a little bit. But yeah, that's kind of where I stand on from an offensive standpoint. Defensively, though, I think they just weren't sharp. And that's from the opponents that they've been playing the last 3 weeks. I think like this Florida team, um, they're clearly their strength is running the football. They just hadn't like delved into that yet. Like I don't have the number in front of me, but I think they ran the ball like 10 times against LSU. They ran like 12 times in the Miami game or something like that. And they ran it 27 times against Texas. So it's like they lean into their run game, they lean into their strength, which is their offensive line, and this was the result. And I don't think the Texas defense played horrible. I don't think they were mentally prepared coming out of the game for the dogfight they were about to be in. Because once they kind of bowed up in the second half, they played fine. It's just that the game was already to a point where they had no margin for error, and then they gave up that long touchdown. And it was over.
On last week's episode, and if you missed it, go check it out because we gave out some grades through 4 games during the Texas bye week. I talked about this game in particular leading into it. And I said, I do not believe, based on the sample size we've seen from this Texas defense, including a game against the number 1 team in the country at Ohio State in Columbus, that this Florida offense, the version that we had seen leading into this Texas game, would be able to score 20 points on this Texas defense. I said that. I was wrong, but I said that. The problem with that, though, is this isn't a Texas offense now or later on in the season that is going to win football games if the other team is scoring anywhere close to what Florida scored on Saturday. If you get above 24 points, you are beating Texas this season, most likely, unless you just like royally screw up, right? Turnovers can swing games. Special teams can obviously swing college football games. We've seen that many times before. But like, I just don't expect that defensive performance to be replicated many times this year. I think the Texas defense will be sharper come Saturday, whether they play Mateer or whether they play Michael Hawkins. They better be, because that's the only way they're going to stand a chance to win that game. But I did have a couple positives from the game that I wrote down. They're small, but they are positive, and then I'll elaborate on this mess with the offense. Really quick, though, my number 1 positive was Emmett Mosley and the fact that he's healthy and he's actually playing for this team. We didn't see much of him, but he's back from whatever lower extremity injury that he was dealing with through the first quarter of the season. And he actually made a couple plays. He did. He had 2 catches for 40 yards. Didn't get a ton of looks, but he did get open a couple times, and he did make a couple catches. That was good to see, at the very least. Especially when you consider, now, luckily for Texas, it doesn't seem like it's going to be that serious. But when Parker Livingston made that catch on Texas's first touchdown drive, I think it was beginning of the second quarter, once they got that fumble, which Ty Anthony Smith forced, and Anthony Hill picked up, that was a brutal hit. And I thought that did not look good for Parker Livingstone when he got up. Luckily, it doesn't seem like it's going to be anything too serious. But luckily, Texas has another receiver that is playable, at least. And then number 2, there weren't a ton of bright spots defensively on Saturday, especially in that first half. But I thought Colin Simmons actually played really well.
Yeah.
Texas generated 6 pressures, and that's not good enough against Florida or any team. Like, they have better talent than that. The last thing I expected in this game or any other game this season was Texas not being able to generate a ton of pressure on opposing quarterbacks. That was like the thing that I thought we could do like consistently, but they just haven't done that at a consistent rate so far this year. 6 pressures against DJ Lagway. Give him credit. He played really well. 4 of them were by Colin Simmons. 4 of them were generated by Colin Simmons. And late in that second quarter, they ran the ball directly at Colin Simmons. 3 consecutive times, and he made either a TFL or a tackle for no gain all 3 times. I thought he was really
against
good
the first-round pick in Austin Barber.
Yes. Like, he may have not had, like, the splash play or a sack, but if you really watch the game, and I watched it a couple times today, even though I regret it, he played well.
Yeah.
The rest of the defense didn't play that great. They played a lot better in the second half. They had a off half in the first half, but at the end of the day, like, my worries aren't on defense. I think this defense will be all right. To expand on what you said real fast, we can talk about Arch if you want to. And yes, like, he is not absolved of blame. He did not play well on Saturday. But in a way, he was kind of like the only thing working on offense. When they made plays, it was in part due to Archman. He accounted for 300 of their 341 yards on Saturday.
Yeah.
So while he didn't play well, he actually, like, considering the circumstances and what his offensive line and how his offensive line, played on Saturday, he actually did about as well as I think most other quarterbacks would in that same scenario. Now, the offensive line was embarrassed. There's just no other way around it. It was an awful performance. Here's a paper popper. Arch Manning was pressured on 59.5% of his dropbacks on Saturday. I don't know how many dropbacks he had, but that's the highest pressure rate faced by any SEC quarterback this season, but not just the SEC. It's the highest pressure rate allowed or faced by any Power 4 quarterback this season.
Wow.
We knew going into the game that Florida defensive front was good. We knew it was the strength of their team going into the game. But, like, you just can't get dominated or physically manhandled like the Texas offensive line did in that game. Because a lot of times this season, we've seen Arch get good protection, and the play still breaks down because his mechanics are off, or he just isn't seeing the field correctly, like you mentioned, or he's just not confident. The last thing we need is for an offensive line to just be allowing Arch to get pummeled the entire game. He got pummeled in that game. And I'm afraid if the offensive line continues to play like that, or some version of that, Arch isn't going to make it through the season without some kind of injury. And that's not what we want. Like, we can talk about whether or not he should be benched or Matthew Caldwell this, KJ Lacey that, but we don't want Arch to be hurt.
Yeah, no.
And like, if the offensive line plays like it did on Saturday, Arch might not make it out of the Cotton Bowl alive, because I think Oklahoma's defensive front is actually a better version of Florida's defensive front. So that's number one. Replicate that performance on Saturday in the Cotton Bowl, and I'll put my 401k on Oklahoma over 10 sacks on Saturday. And you know why I'm confident in that, or would be confident in that if I actually was a betting man? Because I already saw Oklahoma sack Jackson Arnold 10 times against the poorest offensive line.
Against a quarterback that's seeing ghosts. It's a very similar thing. It really is. Arch is holding on to the ball, and even on the plays where the pressure isn't there right away, he's holding on to the ball, and it's creating that like he has a bit of the yips right now. Like there's no getting around that.
But we can't excuse the fact, like we can't make that excuse for the offensive line. Like the offensive line has a part in this too. The second thing I wanted to mention is this running game is a wet bag of trash right now. You can make all the excuses you want to. You can say CJ Baxter wasn't there. You can believe that, in Christian Clark and Jared Gibson. You can say Trey Wisner wasn't completely healthy, which he probably wasn't in that game, coming off what I think is a hamstring injury. You can make all the excuses that you want, but the bottom line is, in year 5 of a coaching staff, it is unacceptable to have a game, any game, I don't care who it is against, where your running backs have 11 carries for 15 yards.
Yeah.
That's 1.36 yards per carry. And very similarly, like the two similarities that Oklahoma and Texas do have right now is neither can run the ball effectively without their quarterback. When Oklahoma runs the ball well, it's John Mateer or it's Michael Hawkins making a play. When Texas runs the ball well, it's actually Arch scrambling and making a play with his legs. It goes on the offensive line. It goes on the running backs. It goes on the entire operation. It goes on Sark too.
Yeah.
Listen to this stat. This will really blow your mind. The last Texas running back rush attempt, the last rush attempt from a running back wearing burnt orange to go for 20 or more yards was Jarrett Gibson last season in the first round college football playoff game against Clemson. Since that carry, 186 rush attempts have gone by Texas running backs, including that Arizona State game, the Ohio State game, and all the carries up to this point in this season. Okay? And of those 186 RB rush attempts, only 2 have gone for 15 or more yards. That blows my mind. That Texas, with as much talent that's on this team, that we can't generate an explosive run play over 15 yards at all. It's a problem. So, like, Arch wasn't good, but he actually was kind of the reason they were kind of in that game to a certain extent. The offensive line was embarrassing, and the run game just isn't that great right now. It's just not. And you can blame whoever you want to. You can point the finger at whoever you want to, but a lot of this falls back on who? Steve Sarkisian.
Yeah, and the fact that they couldn't trust Jared Gibson, Christian Clark, or James Simon to be in the game for like more than like 3 snaps at a time just tells you all you need to know. Like he did not trust those guys in that spot in that moment, and that's just brutal to think about. Like the fact that you have one running back who missed the entire season last year, mind you, go down, and you don't have a backup you can trust after that. Like Wisner was the only guy getting playing time that whole game, and he we've talked about this. Like he just doesn't have the juice. Like that's like he just doesn't. Like he needs a crease and he needs to be able to gain a head of steam for him to be able to get those tough yards, and there was just nothing there. So it's not on Wisner. Like he is who he is. He's a good running back that when you block for him well, he's going to get the most out of that for the
Yep.
most part. He's not going to run away from anybody, but he's going to get those tough yards. But there was no yards to be had, and he's not going to be the guy that's going to create either.
Yeah. One more stat here, and then I'm going to ask you another question. Texas, and this is all via my guy from On Texas Football, CJ Vogel on Twitter. Okay. Texas running back rushing performances in losses over the last 2 seasons. Last year against Georgia, the first Georgia game. Okay. 52 yards, 3.46 yards per carry. Okay. And that's just from running backs. Okay. 24 against Georgia in the SEC championship game, part 2. 53 yards on 2.52 yards per carry. Okay. Ohio State in the Cotton Bowl. 62 yards on 2.81 yards per carry. The best performance of them all, and this is actually a pretty good performance based on what we've seen in Texas losses. This year against Ohio State, the first game of the season, actually not bad. 120 yards on 4.61 yards per carry. But then, of course, Saturday, I mentioned it, 15 yards on 1.36 yards per carry. That's 5 losses dating back to last year. That's 95 rush attempts for 302 yards. That's an average of 3.17 yards per carry and 60 yards per game. It just can't continue to be that bad against teams with a pulse if you're trying to get where Texas wants to go, which they're probably not going to end up this year, but eventually in the future, they got to figure something out. Now, my question for you is, it's kind of a retrospective question. When we were talking in the preseason, were there warning signs present that this might eventually be, like these problems might eventually actually be a problem? And if so, did we ignore them? And if we ignored them, why do you think that we ignored them?
So I think the offensive line part of it, like I think there was reason to be skeptical. And I think most, Texas skeptics heading into the year, they pointed to that offensive line as being, hey, they're replacing 4 guys on that unit. Watch out for that. If they don't get the play out of, that line that they have in years past, it's because of that. And we're 5 weeks in at this point. We got a decent performance in that Ohio State game, but since then, it hasn't been very good. So I think that's probably the one thing that I would point to. Everything else, though, I don't think there was any indication that Arch Manning would play like this based on what we heard. I think coming from the things we heard coming from fall camp, like the fact that the offensive units were struggling a bit. I think it didn't raise alarm bells because it's fall camp and you're going against the Texas defense, but maybe that should have. I don't know. It's hard to say because nobody is able to watch outside of media members.
Yeah. I think there were warning signs, at least for me, that I chose to ignore because I believed, as did a lot of Texas fans believed, that even if Texas was collectively less talented on offense than they were a year ago, which I don't think you can even argue because they had 4-3 speed in droves all over the place, right? With Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond and Jaden Blue, who they desperately miss right now, just from a speed perspective. And Silas,
they had 3 pass catchers last year who are starters on NFL teams right now.
Yeah, so you can't really deny that. I mean, Gunnar Helm, like that offense, including the offensive line, was a lot more talented than this offense. But even with that, I think at least I can't speak for everyone else, thought that Arch Manning would kind of be the tide that lifts all boats. And unfortunately, he just has not been anywhere close to that. Some of it's on him, a lot of it's on him, but not all of it's on him. So like we didn't expect here on this show Arch Manning playing like this. But what we should have known, maybe we did, we just didn't like express it enough or warn people enough. Even though he's in his third year in the program, he hadn't played a lot of football.
Yeah.
And he definitely hadn't started on the road yet in a tough environment like Ohio State and in the SEC on the road. So you had a relatively inexperienced quarterback in Arch Manning with no road starts. And you can argue going into the season, all of Texas's toughest games, and now we kind of view it differently, right? Because A&M is going to be tough at home, Vanderbilt's going to be tough at home. But when we were talking about it before the season, what did we say? The likely 3 toughest games on this schedule were going to be those 3 road games. It was going to be against Ohio State week 1. It was going to be against Florida in the swamp, if that Florida team is what we expect it to be. And it was going to be at Georgia. And now we kind of look at it and almost every game is going to be tough, right? Mississippi State's pretty good. Vanderbilt's really good. You can even
Even Arkansas is feisty.
Arkansas is always feisty, especially against Texas. A&M's like in the top 5 right now. Even a Kentucky team that's not great, probably the worst team remaining on this schedule. It just came out today. That game's going to be a night game in Lexington. And we saw Georgia struggle a couple of years ago when they went on the road at night in Lexington. They almost lost the game. They didn't lose it, but they almost did. It was like 13-12 like defensive ugly brawl, if I remember correctly, a couple of years ago. So yeah. And then there was the fact that they had 0 scholarship running backs coming back that averaged more than 4.8 career yards per carry. And that they were relying upon two running backs coming back from major injuries to be a big part of this offense. They were relying on Christian Clark and C.J. Baxter. C.J. Baxter has played this year and he's looked okay, but now he's hurt again. And Trey Wisner had a hamstring injury. So, I don't know. I think some warning signs were there. You have an offensive line that lost 4 players to the NFL that was starting out fall camp nowhere close to what the 2024 offensive line was. Whatever you thought that this offensive line was going to be, pretty good, bad, whatever. What they were not is Kelvin Banks, Cam Williams, Jake Majors, and everybody else that left, right? The Joe Moore Award finalist offensive line from last year. That offensive line was really good, but even the most honest Texas fans would tell you they weren't good enough in the biggest games last year against Georgia and Ohio State. So there were some warning signs, and I think for me personally, I ignored them because I thought Arch Manning would give us better quarterback play than Quinn Ewers, and he would be able to kind of make everybody else around him better. And that hasn't happened so far. But that's just for me personally. Now, really quick before we get to college basketball, I have 3 quick must-learn lessons for Steve Sarkisian and this coaching staff. Okay? And then we'll move on with whatever time we have left. And you can give a final word if you would like. Actually, I'll give you that opportunity now. Do you have any final words on Texas football? Anything that you want to say or add on to what I said before I give these 3 must-learn lessons for Sark?
I think this loss is going to age well. I don't think Florida's a bad team. I think that's a team that learned that their identity should be running the football. They learned it late, and they learned it at the wrong time for our sake. But I think moving forward, they're going to be able to run the football on a lot of different teams.
Yeah, Jaden Ball, I don't think he's draft eligible this year. But if he continues to play like he does when he gets touches, when Billy Napier actually, gives him the ball, I think he's a first-round talent.
Yeah,
Or
they have some stud receivers too.
At least a day 2 talent. And I've been watching other teams around the country, and I follow recruiting pretty heavily, and he does now too, to a certain extent. And I've been watching Oregon. They're really good. They're one of the best teams in America. And Dante Moore's really good. But they have this guy named DeCorian Moore, who we wanted badly, and he's what do you know? The reason we talked about him so much is because he's
He's pretty good at football.
And Saturday I'm watching Florida and Dallas Wilson. I mean, holy cow.
Yeah.
Texas didn't recruit him necessarily to the extent that they did some of the other receivers, specifically DeCorian Moore. But they tried to flip that guy late. He was committed to Oregon. Once DeCorian Moore went to Oregon, he flipped to Florida. And he'd been hurt so far this season. And what a difference he made for that Florida offense.
Yeah.
On Saturday. And I just have one question. Why can all these other freshmen, 5-star freshman wide receivers play, but ours can't? I have to ask Chris Jackson as the wide receivers coach, what is Ryan Wingo done so good this year that he's completely blocking Khalil Lockett, Jamie French, Michael Terry, any of these 5-star freshmen from getting on the field? What has DeAndre Moore done so great this season that he's blocking the ability for these young freshmen to get on the field? I don't get it.
You want to hear the irony in that? That's the only blocking that he's been doing. It hasn't been run blocking, that's for sure.
Well, I was about to say, if this goes south, they need to play some of the freshmen.
Dude, for real. Honestly, just put your dudes on the field, man. If it's not if the whole point of being a program that recruits as well as we do is when you're not bringing it, if you're not bringing it up to snuff, there's a dude on the bench that's going to take your spot. If we're playing this whole politics game, oh, he's got this big NIL check, we can't bench him. No, we can't do that. No. This next, these next 6 to 8 weeks of SEC play are going to say a lot about the culture that Sark has said he's built. Because if it's for real, then they'll be fine. But if it's not, then this thing might fall apart.
Yep, 100% on the money. 3 must-learn lessons from yours truly, Michael Wein, in this coaching staff. And after I give each one, you can give a thought if you would like. So stop me if you want to say something. Okay. Must-learn lesson number 1. And I should have made lower thirds for these, but whatever. Never, ever again, Sark, de-emphasize speed, and more speed in the portal. Texas played in 2 consecutive national semifinals. 2 consecutive. They're the only program to do that. Largely because they had 4.2 and 4.3 speed in abundance everywhere, at running back and at wide receiver. Okay? They had Xavier Worthy and A.D. Mitchell. Xavier Worthy, literally the fastest person to ever, participate in the NFL Combine or participate in football in general. And A.D. Mitchell, who wasn't slow himself, he ran like a 4.34 at the Combine. And then last year, what'd they do? They went out and got Matthew Golden, who's a 4.2 guy, Isaiah Bond, who's a 4.3 guy, and Jaden Blue, who's a 4.2 guy. Well, they already had Jaden Blue, but you get the point. They had these guys in abundance. And I'd argue one of the only reasons Sark has the Texas job right now is because in 2020 at Alabama, what did that Alabama team have? They had possibly the fastest group of wide receivers in college football history. They had Jalen Waddle, they had Devontae Smith, they had Henry Ruggs, they had, who was the other one? John Mechie. Like, Mac Jones had nuclear weapons on that team. And, look, they did actually go out and get a wide receiver, but Emmett Mosley, Ryan Wingo, and DeAndre Moore are pretty fast, but they're not Matthew Golden and Isaiah Bond and Xavier Worthy. And this Texas offense needs that. The best Sark offenses have featured that kind of speed, and for whatever reason, they just didn't go out and get it this year. I don't know why. I'd love to hear Sark's perspective on that, but do you have any thoughts on that before I move on?
Yeah, I'm there right there with you. And on top of that, going out in the portal for the wide receiver position and getting a guy that's experienced and polished in how they run routes is another thing. Isaiah Bond, he came into Texas as a 2-year starter, by all accounts, pretty much a finished product in terms of his his prospects to play in the NFL. Like he already was a technician in terms of route running. Same with Matthew Golden. I can't really say the same about A.D. Mitchell, but you kind of get the point. Like the speed to go along with bringing veteran leadership in is a big deal.
Yeah, 100%. Must learn lesson number 2. Kyle Flood and Steve Sarkisian, because ultimately, the buck stops with him. But Kyle Flood needs to stop the Dabo Swinney transfer portal negligence on the offensive line. Because the greatest trick that the devil ever played on Steve Sarkisian and Kyle Flood was convincing them this offseason that upgrades to Cole Hudson and Neto Umeozulu, a guy who's been in the program for now 4 years and hadn't started a game up until now this season, didn't an upgrade over both those guys did not exist at all in the transfer portal. Because if it did, they would have gotten they should have and they would have probably gotten, went out and got it. It did exist somewhere out there. I guarantee it. Oregon went out and they got Texas State's right tackle or left tackle, right? They went out and got a big guard from USC who's now a stud for them, right? Texas, in now 5 years of this coaching staff, pretty much, has not gotten a transfer offensive lineman. And we've been asking them to do it. In its performances from Cole Hudson and Neto Umeozulu and all of those interior offensive linemen on Saturday that make you wonder, what are we doing here? We couldn't have at least gotten another option in the transfer portal. I'm not asking for all Americans. I'm just asking for serviceable at this point.
Yeah.
I think they going forward, recruiting and all is great. I think Brandon Baker's going to turn into a really good player. I like Kyle Flood. I really do. He's done really well with some of the projects, including Trevor Gooseby. I actually think this Texas team, if Brandon Baker can just cut down on some of the penalties, which happens to many unexperienced players, I actually think they're pretty fine at tackle. But the interior is a disaster, and they should have at least looked at options in the portal, and I just don't think they did that. They need to do that. And then lesson number 3, I don't know if this is a lesson as much as something I want Sark to do. I think Sark has to look into improving his infrastructure around him. Not necessarily like firing this position coach or getting rid of this position coach and replacing him with this. What I mean by that is there seems to be too much, at least from my perspective, and you can tell me if you agree, there seems to be too much on Sark's plate right now as a head coach. Think about it. He's the head coach of the team. He's the offensive coordinator and play caller. He's their best recruiter. Okay, there are really good recruiters on the staff, but I can tell you this, if Sark didn't exist, they don't get all the players that they're getting. And he's essentially the director and player personnel / GM for this program. Because every decision that happens within this Texas program doesn't happen without Sark's approval. So I just think, I don't know what it is. I'm not here to like tell Sark what to do, but I think there needs to be something. Listen, I don't think he's giving up play calling duties, but like, do you want to put someone in the booth? I don't know. I just think he's got to look into his infrastructure and maybe make some changes. I don't know what those are, but I think he has too much on his plate to be at his best on game day. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with that. Back to your point on the offensive line, though. Just using the portal as a tool to have the guys that are in-house compete for the jobs that they are supposed to earn. Like that's a big deal. Like I want to see these dudes like compete and like earn their spots. Like, and I'm not saying they didn't. Like, obviously there's talent within the building that you have to compete against, but bringing in a veteran, like you can't tell me that Jonte Cook wasn't threatened when they brought in AD Mitchell and who else they bring in that year? No, I think it was just AD Mitchell that year. When they brought in AD Mitchell, of course he felt threatened. And that's probably why he acted the way he did. But the reality is the team becomes better when you have to earn your keep in camp and compete for those spots, like to the highest degree.
Yeah. Ultimately, I just would have liked to. I'm not asking for much, Kyle Flood, but like it would have been nice looking back on it. And I think in retrospect, like they're not going to say it now because they can't. Like they're not going to admit it in season because they're left with what they have. They can't go into the portal right now and just magically fix the personnel issues that are existing on the offensive line, which they should have done, in the portal windows that were available to them. But I think deep down, if you gave Sark truth serum, if you gave Kyle Flood truth serum, I bet they're wishing and begging right now for a capable left guard. Because you know what? It got so bad on Saturday that they had to put Nick Brooks, a freshman, at left guard. Texas has now had 4 guys play left guard this season. We're 5 games into the season. Connor Stroh, kind of good, but not consistently good. Neto, kind of the same way. He has good moments, but not consistently good. Not nearly good enough to get Texas where they want to go, at least. And Nick Brooks, a guy who came into Texas at like 370 plus pounds and probably not in the best of shape right now as a freshman, not really expected to play this year. Like if he's being thrust into that spot because you're that desperate, if you're having to move Brandon Baker mid-game to right guard because DJ Campbell in his senior season can't get it done at a good enough level for your offense to function, I just don't know. That's what the thing that makes me the most somewhat pissed off in a way, but like the thing that irks me the most and has me the most down about what's happening to the Texas football team right now is not that they lost to Florida. It's not that they have 2 losses and are probably going to miss the playoff, although that's a failure. It's just like I, how do I want to word this? It's that these problems aren't completely fixable, I don't think. Like, I don't know how much the offensive line can get better. I don't know how much, as you mentioned when we started off the show, I don't know how much Arch is going to improve playing in this current infrastructure of the offense because they can't go into the portal right now and just magically fix their personnel deficiencies. So that's the thing that hurts me the most is a lot of these issues aren't fixable at this point in the season. They kind of are who they are right now.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's where we'll end that conversation. There was a lot to cover there. I think we did it. We're about 50 minutes in,
Yeah.
and let's get started on this college basketball here.
Yeah. We're not going to get to all of it, obviously, because we had a lot to say there, and I kind of expected that. But we can get to at least some of it here.
Yeah.
This will drag into the next episode. But we're talking college basketball. 4 weeks from right now, Texas plays a college basketball game that counts. They'll probably actually be done with their game by this point in time. But like there is big college basketball games 4 weeks from today. We are a month from the season, less than that, in fact. And I'm super excited. I always get really excited for college basketball season. Emmy, I guess we'll start here. And this might be the only conversation we ultimately get to here over the next 10, 15 minutes with the time that we have left. I've seen an SEC preseason, tiers list from The Athletic that came out last week. I've seen other publications, whether it's CBS Sports or, other, college basketball writers give their, SEC power rankings or SEC tiers. And right now in most of those tiers lists, in most of those preview articles, they have Texas in year 1 under Sean Miller listed as a bubble team in their preseason prognostications. On The Athletic, they have Texas 10th in the bubble category with Texas A&M and Ole Miss, along with Vanderbilt, and I think that's it. Yep. And then in another, they also have Texas in CBS Sports. Isaac Trotter, they have Texas as a bubble team. So my question for you is, do you agree with that? Would you kind of categorize this Texas roster in year 1 under Sean Miller with whatever your thoughts are as a bubble team? Or do you think they deserve more respect than that?
Yeah, I think they are a bubble team. I think there's going to be a lot to figure out, given that this roster has been completely like twisted around a little bit. I think from a defensive standpoint, I think this team has, there's very good reason to believe that this is going to be a very good defensive team. And Sean Miller, in the last few years, in Xavier, he had his teams really get out and run, get out on the break, and play like a nice, like flowing offense. He never really did that at Arizona, but that seemed to be the point of emphasis at Xavier. And I think that part of it will carry over. It's just that I look at it and I think like when Tremont Mark collapses the defense, when Kendall Weaver collapses the defense, when Tremori, like, wait, what is it? What was his name?
Traore.
Traore collapses the defense. Like, who are they kicking out to? Are they going to hit their shots? That's really what it comes down to me.
Yeah. There are the good thing about this Texas basketball team is, or the first good thing is, I think they made an upgrade in the coaching department. Even though I love and respect Rodney Terry for what he did, because he did deserve the job for what he did, and with what happened to Chris Beard, and we're not gonna like rehash that.
Yeah.
But I do think, based on his track record, that Sean Miller is an upgrade over Rodney Terry. So you like that. And you like the fact that he's bringing over two players from that Xavier team last year that beat Texas in that first 4 game. Dalen Swain, who's a NBA prospect for next year, a junior, experience, really broke out last year, especially near the end of the season. Averaged 11 points per game and close to 6 rebounds per game. Big, long, experienced, athletic wing that can do a lot of good things for this Texas team. And Lassina Traore, who didn't play last year. He was a medical redshirt at Xavier, but in his last year at Long Beach State, averaged a double-double and was a very productive player. He's big, he's strong, could be a really good big off the bench for this Texas team behind Matas Voikatitis, who is a lot of people's favorite addition to this team. He's a 7-foot, 240-pound sophomore coming from FAU and had a really good freshman season for Florida Atlantic. The couple worries I have with this Texas team, and you hit on one of them, is number one, are they going to hit their open catch and shoot shots? What are they going to shoot from the field? Guys like I trust guys like Cam Heide, a transfer from Purdue, to knock down shots. He's been in that winning environment. He's played at Purdue. To a certain extent, on certain nights, I think that Tremont Mark is absolutely a guy who can heat up, right? I think there are certain guys on this roster who will have nights where they are hot. Jordan Pope is one of those guys. Even a guy like Simeon Wilcher, who they bring in from St. John's, can shoot it a little bit. But on their open catch and shoot opportunities, are they going to be able to knock down those shots consistently enough to be consistent? Because they certainly don't have a Trey Johnson on this team. So that's number one. And then number two is, because I agree with you, I think there's a lot of potential defensively, and I think they're going to be a plus defensive team in the SEC. Because I think they have more size and rim protection with Voikatitis and Traore. And Dalen Swain is a really good perimeter defender. Cam Heide's done it, at Purdue. He's a winning player. He's not a counting stats player. He's not going to blow you away on the box score, but he does a lot of things that contribute to winning basketball. The same thing with Kendall Weaver. Like, he's the Energizer Bunny. He defends at a really high level when he's in the game. He sparks this Texas team a lot of times. I think they have enough defensively to be a solid defensive team. The question is there a guy, on this Texas team that has the skill set of, I'm going to make things easier for everyone else around me? I'm going to make a play here. I'm going to set up a wide open shot for Tremont Mark on the wing. I'm gonna set up Matas Voikatitis with a great, easy look at the rim. I don't know if there's that guy on this team, and that worries me a little bit offensively. But ultimately, what it's going to come down to for them is knocking down open shots consistently from some of these ancillary pieces. And, do they have will they have a guy that can kind of set the offense, that can make some things easier for this offense the way that it flows? So I think they'll be pretty good defensively, and I think there will be nights where this team shoots the ball really well, and they will put up a lot of points, and they will look really good offensively. So I do think there are a lot of good pieces here. I really do. I don't think they had as much as I liked Caden Shedrick. I don't think he's Voikatitis. He definitely wasn't Voikatitis,
No,
as a freshman at Virginia. Um, and he's certainly not that big and strong. They have more of an interior physical tough presence, which I really like about this team. They're going to need it in the grind of the SEC. It's just how are all the pieces going to fit together offensively? Are they going to shoot the ball well enough? I trust a couple guys on this team to have nights where they will shoot the ball really well. One of which is Cam Heide. His strength at Purdue was knocking down big threes in big moments. But are they going to be able to do that consistently enough and at a high enough level to win enough games in the SEC to make the tournament? And their non-conference schedule isn't easy either. They got to play Duke. They're playing the Maui Invitational this year, so they got to play Virginia. That's a game I'm going to go to, by the way, at the Moody Center in December. In the SEC ACC Challenge, which is in early December. So, and Virginia is going to be a force to be reckoned with in the ACC this year with their new coach and the transfers that they brought in. So, yeah, that's kind of it on Texas basketball. I think they can definitely get to that next tier, which is like tournament team. They're going to have enough opportunities to get the resume to be that. And I think a lot of the pieces are better than what they had last year, but it's just I got to see it. Like both of us got to see it. Any other? We'll stop there for tonight. I wanted to get to more, but we'll stop there. We'll pick up with the rest of the SEC next episode. But is there anything else from either a Texas basketball standpoint, college basketball standpoint, or college football standpoint that you want to quickly hit on as a parting shot to end tonight's show?
well, I do just want to add a couple of quick things from the Texas basketball team. I think they're going to be in a lot of close games. And are they going to be able to execute down the stretch in close games, like and generate enough offense when defenses ultimately are clamping down a little bit? Another thing is free throw shooting. I don't know how Texas ranked last year in terms of free throw shooting, but when I watched them play, it seemed like they clanked a lot of free throws. So that's another thing that's going to play a big part for this team, because I know they're going to be in a lot of close games, and they're going to have a lot of games that are kind of come down to, can you hit your free throws?
Yeah, that's a good point. In the tournament, especially if they are fortunate enough to get there, that's important. And is in as many close games as they're probably going to play regardless in the SEC. That'll be really important. Getting fouled down the stretch and being able to knock down free throw shots. That's going 7 for 12 from the line and going 9 or 10 or 12 from the line can be the difference in winning or losing. So that's going to be super important. That's a good point. Two parting shots really quickly. One's a question for you, and then the other is just a quick parting shot. I'll get the quick parting shot out of the way first. Sean Miller did pick up his first top 50 recruit last week. We won't talk about him today, but Bo Ogden, he's a guard from Westlake High School here in the Austin area, top 50 guy in the 2026 class. Really good player, can shoot the hell out of the ball. He's not a Trey Johnson. He's not that kind of elite prospect, but off to a good start for Sean Miller on the recruiting trail. And then Emmy, I have to ask you, who's the best team in college football right now? Is it Ohio State? Is it Miami? Or is it Oregon, in your opinion?
I think it's Ohio State. I think they have the best defense in the country, and they have a quarterback that's coming into his own with two elite wide receivers. So I think until proven otherwise, I think it's still Ohio State.
I agree. Who would you have number 2?
Mm,
I would have Miami personally, but I want to hear your opinion.
yeah, I lean Miami just based on their resume, but if it really came down to it, I would probably guess that Oregon will be the better team in the long run. But based on what Miami has proved, like I think you got to give them the respect and put them at 2.
Yeah. Lastly, before we head out of here, who should feel worse right now? Texas fans or Penn State fans?
Oh fuck. Oh, I think you feel worse if you're Penn State because like you just straight up like there wasn't like an excuse of like, oh, like we just didn't, go into the transfer portal. Like we didn't really put all our chips in like we should have. Like all that. Like there's none of that for Penn State. Like they went out and paid millions for this defensive coordinator and they couldn't get a stop against a 0-4 football team that was like in the 100s in rankings in the country in terms of offensive production in every single category. So just like embarrassing doesn't even begin to describe that game.
Yeah. I have to agree with you, even if it's only to make myself feel a little bit better
Yeah.
about Texas. But what you can't say about Texas is that they lost a game to an 0-4 UCLA team that had lost 2 games to Group of 5 competition. But guys, appreciate you guys tuning in. We really appreciate it. I have a feeling this podcast is going to do really well once it goes up on the channel here in the next couple days. This was a jam-packed show. I wanted to get to more college basketball, but that's okay. We'll do it next week. And again, we record twice a week on this channel. Once for this show, Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports, and once where we're talking NFL, which we will be doing again later this week, as we always do. I think that I haven't discussed it with Emmy yet, but I think this week we got to course correct our power rankings that we did a couple weeks ago because a lot's happened. And then maybe
Yeah.
next week,
Including right now, the Chiefs are currently down by 3 with 6 minutes to play.
Oh boy, that's
Yeah.
because the last time I checked, they were up 14-0. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'll go watch the end of that game. But yes, like we'll probably do power rankings this week, and the next week, who knows? Maybe we'll do sour rankings, which is like the 10 worst teams in the NFL. I don't know. But make sure you guys tune in to all the content that's coming, and we will see you guys next time here on Deep in the Heart of Longhorn Sports. For Michael Wein, he's Emmy Nixon. We'll see ya. Hook 'em. Peace.
Peace out. Hook 'em.